The Andrews government are busy readying plans to allow international students back into Victoria to resume their studies. Now, this has come off the back of the education sector's warnings of an $8 billion loss if foreign students remain locked out for their first semester. For more, I'm joined by Victorian Shadow Minister for Industry, Ryan Smith from Melbourne. Ryan, thank you so much for your time tonight. Senior industry figures say the caps are going to devastate the sector's chances of revival in 2021. And yet, how can we allow international students in when we don't allow our own people to revive the economy?
Well, it's certainly a good point to make. I mean, I'm my own office, my colleagues' offices are inundated with people who are just screaming to come home. We've had, as we've seen, just numerous border closures. Premiers have been making these decisions left, right and centre, but it's only Victoria where our government seems to be in a situation where they're not even allowing their own citizens to come back to their house. And that's leaving people stranded, spending money that many of them don't have, fears that their kids aren't going to be back in time for school, particularly after the year that they had last year. So you would think that the priority would be to get your own citizens back home. But yeah, now we hear that the government hasn't done the work that's required to actually plan for international students to come back, but they are talking about it. But instead of putting the priority on the citizens that should be coming home that are stranded across the border, we seem to be talking about bringing people in from overseas.
Yeah, it seems like a very unusual move. I understand the fiscal impact of it, but Victoria's failed hotel quarantine program, which was run by the Victorian government, was the catalyst really for a second wave right across Australia. It was responsible for the vast majority of deaths in Australia. It was a disaster. There's no way to describe it other than that. How can they, with any confidence, say we're going to manage the repatriation of or the reintegration of foreign students in a manner any better than what they've demonstrated they're capable of?
Well, you're right. It has been a litany of failures, whether it's through contact tracing or the hotel quarantine fiasco. We've just seen failure after failure after failure. And as you rightly said, that's the biggest public policy failure that this state's ever seen, maybe the country's ever seen, with over 800 deaths on the hands of the policymakers. I would think that when we're talking about bringing international students in, and indeed tennis players for that matter who have tested positive, not bringing citizens home tells me that the government's still not confident in its own ability to test enough people to trace them and even to keep any future pandemic contained. I mean, I think Victorians, after the year that they've had, the kind of lockdown that we've had, that it's been, far more advanced than anywhere else in Australia, indeed in most of the world. They're terrified. Victorians are terrified that we're going to go into a third wave. And with the government just simply not allowing its own citizens to come home, it doesn't give me much confidence. It shouldn't give Victorians much confidence that the government feels it's got on top of these things.
Yeah, it's a matter of priorities, and I think the Victorian government's got it all wrong. Now, if I talk about your broader portfolio, so we just get off the students for a moment, yeah. Victorian industry must be struggling as well. I mean, I've heard from captains of industry over there that they really have concerns about the planning for the future. They know that if they boot up their businesses again, there's a high prospect that Victoria will make some unilateral decision and close them down. They're desperately concerned. The confidence of the business sector must be smashed over there. Would that be fair?
Absolutely fair. And it's fair also to say, I mean, I've had industry groups tell me that many businesses were looking at leaving Victoria anyway before the pandemic even started, because it is such a business-unfriendly government. It's the policy direction that the government's taken is one that's just not supportive of business at all. The pandemic was the icing on the cake, and that the fact is that in the roadmap that the government put together, they briefly consulted with industry and then largely dismissed what they had to say. There's no doubt that industry is looking to leave. Large portions of it are looking to leave this state as soon as they're able to, and it's evident in the job vacancy figures that came out. Every single state in this country has an increased level of job vacancies. Victoria is the only state where that number's going down. So you're exactly right. There is simply no confidence for business in this government or what this government's going to do.
Well, it's desperately disappointing for all Australians and Victorians in particular, but there's a world of opportunity for you guys to seize the mantle and take the initiative and restore some confidence back in Victoria. I'm so grateful for your time, so good luck and more strength to your arm in the 2021.
Thanks a lot, Cory.